The Steelers have a golden opportunity, and just how important is it for them to beat the Bengals this weekend? The possibilities for who they would play in the postseason used to be endless, but now it's been narrowed down significantly. On this episode of Steelers Digest, we're going to dive into the possibilities of who the Steelers may play in the first round of the playoffs in Wild Card Weekend. Welcome to Steelers Digest. My name is Remington Kuhn. First and foremost, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. 91% of you are not yet subscribed. If you want the latest updates surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers, we have you covered here on Steelers Digest. And today, the most important order of business is talking about the playoff possibilities. The Steelers clinched their spot weeks ago. Even though they lost, they made the playoffs with 10 wins. But now the question is, who will they play in the first round of the playoffs? They had a chance to win the division. They controlled their own destiny. And now that path becomes much more difficult following a loss to Baltimore and Kansas City. The focus for Mike Tomlin's Steelers this week is getting that bad taste out of their mouths before the playoffs. Tomlin said in a press conference earlier today, "We want to get the stench of the last game off of us." It's a 3-game losing streak for the Steelers for the first time this season, and this next game could provide a massive boost in momentum heading into the playoffs if the Steelers can be victorious against the red-hot Bengals. Mike Tomlin also said this. He said that he has not pondered what he would do if the Ravens win, securing the division, and if he would rest players. But likely not. Even if the division is not at stake, the focal point for the Steelers right now is going into the playoffs on a positive note. Regardless of who they are playing, the division could be out of the question if the Ravens beat the Browns, a game they are heavily favored to win. If they get to 12 wins, they clinch the AFC North. So Tomlin has obviously considered the possibility of resting everybody against the Bengals, but going into the playoffs on a 4-game losing streak could just be the end of the Steelers season. Beating the Bengals is a big deal, not just for what seed they will be in the playoffs, but for confidence. And that's how Mike Tomlin feels. We have a lot of key players that could be coming back from injuries, including Joey Porter Jr. So next we have to actually dive into what these playoff possibilities are, how this might play out. So I found an article that described the playoff seeding and matchup scenarios heading in to Week 18. So the Steelers, as we said already, controlled their own destiny, lost the AFC North essentially to the Ravens, barring a crazy Ravens loss to the Browns and a Steelers underdog victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's not out of the question, but it's a very low possibility. It was 7% chance, and now it is less than that. So the Steelers are in a tough spot. They're pretty much guaranteed to be either the 5 seed or the 6 seed at this point. They cannot be the 7 seed because the Denver Broncos may get in with 10 wins, or the Bengals could jump them with 9, or the Miami Dolphins could jump them with 9. So let's just get into the possibilities here. If you look at this graph here that I'm going to pull up in just a second, it will go over every single possibility that there is for the AFC playoff matchups in Wild Card Weekend. We know the Chiefs are the 1 seed. That's not going to change. And we know the Bills are the 2 seed. As we take a look at the graphic that details every single possibility for the Pittsburgh Steelers. These are all of the seeding scenarios based on 5 key games that will take place in Week 18, including the Steelers versus the Bengals and the Browns versus the Ravens. 50% of those scenarios on the far left column will show the Ravens winning, and the other half show Cleveland winning. And the same can be said about the second column with Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. The Las Vegas LA Chargers game, the Chargers winning would essentially clinch them the 5 seed over the Steelers if they were to lose to the Cincinnati Bengals. The 7 seed is the one that is the biggest wild card because Houston is locked into the 4 seed. So the only seed that can change among the division winners and the only division still up for grabs is the AFC North. In that small possibility that the Steelers win and the Ravens lose, they would take the number 3 seed and play a playoff game at Acrisure Stadium. Barring anything crazy, though, they are most likely going to be the 5 seed, and if they're not the 5 seed, they could end up in the 6 seed. The scenarios in which that could happen are listed on the left, and they all involve the Chargers winning and the Steelers losing to Cincinnati. So this is the important part to keep in mind. If the Steelers and the Ravens both lose, the Ravens would still win the division. If the Steelers win and the Ravens lose, that is the only path to the AFC North. So just keep that in mind going into this weekend. The only way the Steelers can win the North is a Ravens loss to Cleveland and a Steelers win over Cincinnati. But the most realistic situation, if both of those teams win, Ravens and Steelers, the Steelers would be the 5 seed and they would be on the road against the Houston Texans on Wild Card Weekend. Now, if they do lose to the Bengals and the Chargers get a victory over Las Vegas, the LA Chargers would become the number 5 seed in the AFC. They would play the Houston Texans, and then the Steelers would be on the road at Baltimore. So those are the 2 possible opponents for the Steelers. Houston, which is the more likely of the 2 scenarios, and then Baltimore is the less likely of the 2 scenarios, but still a realistic possibility to play the Ravens. Now, if the Steelers were to win the AFC North, they would still play the Chargers. That's the only team they could play because the Chargers would be locked in to the number 6 seed at that point because the Ravens hold a tiebreaker over the Chargers, whether they win or not. So the Ravens would be locked into the 5 seed at worst, but for the most part, they are almost guaranteed the 3 seed. Obviously, the Cleveland Browns could do us a real big favor, but they're more worried about getting a higher draft pick at this point. So I know it's a lot of information to hit you with. There's a lot going on here. We know that. There's a ton going on in this chart, but here is this simple version of this very detailed analysis. If the Steelers are the number 3 seed, they would be home against the Chargers. If the Steelers are the 5 seed, they would play at the Houston Texans. And if they are the 6 seed, they would play at the Baltimore Ravens. Those are the only 3 possibilities. We're already in the playoffs, clinched a few weeks ago, as I said in the open. But the real question is the seeding. We know the Chiefs are the 1 seed, we know the Bills are the 2 seed, and we know the Texans are the 4 seed. We also know whoever gets in between Cincinnati, Miami, and Denver would be the 7 seed and would play at Buffalo. So Buffalo has 3 possibilities of teams they could play. So obviously the most ideal scenario for the Steelers would be to be the home team against the Chargers. But I also wouldn't mind, and I revealed this in the last video, if we were playing at the Houston Texans, I think that is a favorable matchup for the Steelers. If I had to bet, and if I was a betting man, I would bet the Steelers would be favorites in that game. The Houston Texans have shown me almost nothing this entire season. They had a cakewalk division that they were able to win easily over very bad teams, including the Colts, who are very bad. They just lost to the New York Giants yesterday, who put their number 1 pick chances in jeopardy to win that game and take the Colts out of the playoff picture. But either way, the Steelers are going to have a tough road ahead, especially if they have to play the Baltimore Ravens, a team that just bested them not long ago, but a team that the Steelers have had a track record of success against. So it's a team they know very well, and I still think it is a decent matchup for the Steelers. The Ravens shouldn't be that big of favorites, maybe a touchdown favorite in that game. But either way, this weekend is going to be huge for the Steelers because the difference between those 3 matchups is huge. It's crucial. If they somehow manage to get through this and play a home game or play at Houston, that is significantly better odds than playing the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore, as we already saw how that played out. So hopefully, for our sake, the Steelers can pull this off. Either win the division or at least get the number 5 seed. That would be a favorable matchup for the Steelers. As we look at the bracket here, currently the NFC is not something we are worried about, but for the AFC, Steelers are penciled in to play the Houston Texans. Again, a favorable matchup, but then the winner of that game would play Kansas City in the second round. Either way, the Steelers are going to have a tough road ahead. There are a lot of very good teams in the AFC this year. The Ravens being one of them, the Bills, the Chiefs, and I would put the Steelers in that conversation as well as the 4 elite teams in the AFC. And then the dark horse would be the Los Angeles Chargers, a team that has a very good defense and a very good quarterback in Justin Herbert. Either way, it's Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Justin Herbert. 5 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, all representing their teams in the AFC playoffs. And obviously, CJ Stroud had a heck of a rookie season last year, but sophomore slumps are real, and CJ Stroud has been proof of that this season. And he just lost another key receiver, Tank Dell, which means maybe our old buddy Deontay Johnson will see some snaps for the Texans. You never know. Either way, I like our odds against a team like that, and that would be my most preferred matchup, is playing the Houston Texans. I think we could win that game. So thank you guys for watching this episode of Steelers Digest. Those are all the possibilities for the playoffs laid out and detailed for you guys. Again, my name is Remington Kuhn. Thank you guys for watching this episode of Steelers Digest, and we'll see you on the next one in 2025.